everyone, and a very warm welcome to all of you once again to this webcast by FactShala. FactShala, which literally means a school of facts, is a pan-India news and information literacy program launched by Internews in collaboration with DataLeads and with the support from Google.org and Google News Initiative. My name is Surbhi Malik and I'm the program director at Internews, and I'm going to be your moderator for this session. So if I may just begin by a quick house rules. I know a lot of you are joining us on YouTube or Zoom. So if I may please ask you to keep posting your queries in the chat window on both of these platforms. We really want this to be an interactive session and have plenty of time for Q&A at the end. So if you can please keep your queries coming as we take, and then we'll let our speakers take the questions at the end at one go. I know a lot of you are sending greetings to us, so thank you everyone once again for taking out time to join us on this Saturday morning. It's really a pleasure to connect with you. I know a lot of you have been over the last few weeks, logged inside your houses, and a lot of you have been feeling overwhelmed with all of the information that you've been receiving about coronavirus. In fact, such has been the overload of information that the World Health Organization, or the WHO, has declared COVID-19 an infodemic. Which means there is just so much of information that it's difficult for one to understand really what to believe or what not to, and discern the truth from all of the rumors and hoaxes and conspiracy theories doing the rounds. So how does one really navigate this COVID-19 infodemic and sift really the helpful information from all the harmful ones? How can you keep the misinformation virus away and verify the authenticity of a message that you've just got and that you've just been wanting to forward to a loved one? What are really the best practices of information hygiene? In this next 1 hour or so, we will help you get answers to these and many more such questions that you may have, and really help you begin understanding the information ecosystem around you. But remember, friends, this is just the beginning of this learning journey and FactShala's association with you. It's our beginning in our resolve to help you understand the nature of online content better and let you take charge of the information that you consume. Through the course of this year, we at FactShala will be bringing you lots more programs and resources, games and workshops to help you access truthworthy information and take charge of the information you consume. Information hygiene is really a habit that you can nurture with the right awareness, and we really hope to impart this through this program. I will be sharing some program details with you in a very short while from now, so we can keep connected in this learning journey. But before that, let me quickly give you an intro about our eminent speakers. So to help you get started with this journey, today we have two experts joining us. Kanchan Kaur, who's the Dean at the Indian Institute of Journalism and New Media at Bangalore. Kanchan has also been an assessor of the International Fact-Checking Network, which certifies fact-checking organizations in all across the world. We also have with us Pratik, who's the co-founder of Altnews and also one of the early fact-checkers in the country. Altnews is another IFCN certified organization. Hello, Kanchan, and hello, Pratik.
Hi to everybody and everybody's out.
We also have with us Syed Nazakat, the founder and editor-in-chief of DataLeads, which is one of our partners for this program, and is very happy to join you and along with me to run you through some of the details of the program.
Yeah, thank you so much. We're really glad actually we are doing this. It's the first event or session we are doing under the FactShala. And throughout this year, as we mentioned, we are going to be really enjoying our association with all of you in different ways, workshops, trainings and all. And I think once we are done with this particular webcast session, hopefully we will share the more details with you at the end. Yeah.
Thank you, Syed. And again, I know a lot of you are posting questions, and we've been very happy to see a lot of questions come to us already in the sign-up forms that we'd got. And we will be taking quite a few of them, time permitting, at the end of this session. So please keep your questions coming. And before I hand it over to my, to my speakers, really, let me quickly give you a quick rundown on how you can keep connected with us through FactShala. So if I may quickly share my screen with all of you. I hope all of you can see my screen now. So as I just mentioned, FactShala is a news and information literacy program launched by Internews in collaboration with DataLeads and with the support of google.org and the Google News Initiative. The aim really is to help adults in non-metro cities, specifically if you are in tier 2 and tier 3. We will be being more in touch. We really want to help everybody out, but the program target audience will be villages, tier 2 and tier 3 cities, and we'll help all of you understand the nature of online content better. Our focus specifically will be on women and underserved communities. These are essentially the cities which will see a lot of our programming in the days to come. So, from Srinagar, Amritsar, Jammu, Gwalior, if you are, connecting to us through all of these cities, please do make sure to stay in touch, because we'll have a lot of, other programs coming up for you through this year. And just to give you a brief idea of how you can really connect with us. So FactShala will be conducting a lot of interactive workshops, boot camps, fun games. We'll be sharing a lot of resources with you. So you can essentially sign up to host a workshop. So if you are, either a college, you want it, for your own organization, it could be your own employees, or if you have a group in a society that really we want to reach you so you can help understand the information that you're really receiving, whether that's true or not. What are the trustworthy sources? All of the questions that you've essentially sent us. Like I mentioned, this is sort of a learning journey. We really want to make a good start now, but if we keep connected, it will help us share more resources with you. Another thing that you can do is really become a trainer with us for this program. The link that I have shared with you on the screen, we'll also be pinging this through this interaction in the chat box. It's also available on our various social media platforms on Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube. So you can connect with us through these platforms as well, and find this link. Who all can be really the trainers. We're looking at building this community of people who want to help others around them really learn more about news literacy and learn the value of trustworthy news. You can also connect with us through this hashtag. If you've learned something new, please do tag us at FactShala Learning, and share if you have videos that you've processed. If you found messages, just shoot a short video and tag it us, on all of these platforms, and we'll be sure to, come back to you with it. All right, if I may, now very quickly hand over to Kanchan. Kanchan, why don't you start talking to us about, what really news literacy means, and, how is knowing about, what is news and what are the other forms of information important?
Sure. Thank you, Surbhi, for that introduction to FactShala and to all of us. I'm just going to, shall I start sharing my screen?
Yes.
Just give me a minute. I should be there. Right. So, like Surbhi said, we've been living through an information revolution in the last few years, but in the especially with the coming of social media and the internet and so on and so forth. But in the last few weeks, in the words of the WHO chief, as Surbhi said, we are living through an infodemic. We have a flood of information coming our way, and this information is coming our way from traditional means like TV, newspapers, neighborhood gossip, and also from non-traditional means, like non-traditional for, well, people of my generation, if you want to say, from forwards like WhatsApp, Facebook, Twitter, and even email, right? So how do we make sense of this whole lot of information that keeps coming our way? So the Center for News Literacy, Stony Brook University, has divided all of this into sections, or neighborhoods as they call them. So information that comes your way can be just raw information. It can be advertising, publicity, propaganda, entertainment, and journalism. So what we'll quickly do is we'll go through each one of these, and we'll see how each of these information can be put into separate slots or silos, and how they affect us and how we make sense of all of this. So we're going to start with raw information. This is what a lot of us get all the time. Say a video like this, right? Somebody's seen something happening in the on the street somewhere. They've taken their phones, like just now everybody with a mobile phone has become a journalist in that sense of the word. So they've taken this video on the phone and they have just sent it out, right? So it's not been edited, and there's we've no idea where it's come from, and it's probably, well, it's someone's taken it. So this is basically raw information. Raw information is also in the form of something that comes from, say, the Ministry of Health. right? So they put out every day, they put out FAQs, they tell us what is COVID, what is coronavirus, what are the symptoms, they give us numbers, so on and so forth, right? And also the census puts out, the government puts out completely raw data like this, this is the census data of 2011. Now, all of this raw information needs to be processed. This is like anything that you get raw, whether it's raw vegetables, anything that you get, it needs to be processed in order for us to understand what it really means or what it's trying to say. And we'll talk about this as we go along. And then you have plenty of advertising, right? This can be clearly in the form of ads like this. This was on the front page of the Indian Express a couple of days ago, right? And then you see these kind of ads, not just in newspapers, but you also see them on television. You see them on hoardings on roads as you're driving along. They also pop up when you're watching something on YouTube, when you're scrolling through your favorite website, right? Sometimes they can also be hidden, right? They will pretend to be useful information. So if you look at this, and this is something being told by the Himachal Chief Minister, but if you look at this little word here, that it says, or paid content. Right? Similarly here, now you have Mr. Modi's face over here, and you think that this is going to be news and you're probably going to look at it. But if you look at this here, it says again, sponsored or paid content, which basically means that somebody has paid for this to appear on this website. So you need to be a little wary of this. This is actually advertising, right? So similarly is the case with promotion and publicity. So if you look at this, for instance, this is supposed to be a COVID-19 concert, right? And this is an online music concert for COVID-19, right? And this is Mick Jagger and Will Smith are going to perform for this. So what this does is it promotes not just the cause over here, but also gives enough publicity to the people who are involved, the celebrities involved, in this case, Mick Jagger and Will Smith, right? And a lot of these things are held, they've been held even in the past. This is not a new phenomenon. So in 1971, when Bangladesh was just coming out of the war, Ravi Shankar and George Harrison held a concert for Bangladesh. And this was again, we saw it on TV, it was, there were albums, and this was, again, there's publicity for the cause, and at the same time, there's publicity for the celebrities. So you need to know that this is publicity, right? Then comes propaganda. So propaganda is when you're trying to promote a point of view or an ideology. For instance, President Trump has been going on about how the COVID-19 virus originated in Wuhan in a lab, right? And he has been saying that at every press conference, at every occasion, he's been tweeting it very regularly with absolutely no evidence, right? We've also had, I think, Mr. Nitin Gadkari, who's been sending out these messages. But in the case of Mr. Trump, it has been a concerted campaign against China. And this can come under what we say is propaganda, right? And then, of course, there's entertainment, right? You have Netflix or Amazon series, you have PUBG, you have movies, all of this comes under entertainment. And that's very clearly entertainment, unless, of course, sometimes if entertainment pretends to or tries to pretend to be history in the case of movies like Padmavat and so on, Milkha Singh and all of that stuff, right? So, but basically this is entertainment and very clearly entertainment. And then we have journalism, right? So what is journalism? So let's take a look at what is journalism. Now I ask this question often to people. People I meet, students I talk to, what do they think is journalism? So the answers that I add up, usually what is journalism adds up to somewhat like this. It's telling people what they need to know or what they want to know. There's of course a debate between what you need to know and what you want to know, right? You might need to know something, but you might not want to know it, right? So, but we'll leave that aside for the moment. But let's say you stumbled upon an article that said boiling tulsi leaves with pepper and jeera will enhance immunity and that will keep you safe from COVID-19. So you feel that your friends need to know this, and you also feel that your friends might want to know it. right? So you are then putting it out and sending it to them because you think that they need to know this and they want to know it. But then does it become journalism? So how different then is journalism from, say, gossip and dinner time conversations? So let's say you were, you went down for a walk. You just heard somebody say, "Oh, so and so in this flat has got COVID-19, right?" And you have no information, you don't know about it, nothing, but you come back and you tell 3 other people, "Oh, you know that auntie in that flat has got COVID-19, right?" Similarly, at the end of the day, you're sitting down having dinner with your family. What did you do today? Did you hear this? Did you hear that, oh, that our neighboring zone has now been called a containment zone, right? You're having this conversation. Again, here, your parents want to know what you've been doing through the day. They need to know what you've been doing through the day, but would that qualify as journalism, right? Would that really qualify as journalism? So how do we make the differentiation? How do we differentiate journalism from the other silos that we've been talking about? So the difference really is journalism uses standards and rules. A lot of us might think that all you need to do is go into the city, look at what's happening, come back, write it, and you're done with it. That's not entirely true. That's in some ways true, but you have a certain set of standards, and you have a certain set of journalists go by a certain set of standards and rules. They also employ a lot of ethics and values. There's not every photograph that comes onto your front page, right? There's not every photograph or every video that is edited, that is put out without editing. It's very rare that journalists put out raw information without editing, right? It's because there are certain ethics and values that go behind it, right? And journalism requires critical thinking. It requires the reporter to think, figure out what's happening, and then decide what to do next, right? And journalism really has a crucial function in democracies, especially democracies, because democracies are where you actually decide who is going to represent you in the parliament, right? We keep forgetting that all those people sitting in the parliament, the MPs and the MLAs in the legislative assembly, are actually our representatives, and we need to know what they are doing because we voted for them, right? We keep saying they are our rulers. Really not. They are our representatives. We need to stop and think about that, and we need to think about how we have voted them into power in order for them to do something for us. And that will come across only when you have journalism and you have a free press that puts out information and says, these are the guys you voted for, and look, this is what they're doing. This could be positive stuff that, yes, they're building these roads, they're putting out these water ATMs, etc., 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 but they could also be, making money for themselves and doing things that are really not what you wanted them to do. So journalism has a crucial function in democracies. So what really are the elements of journalism? And here we want to take a look at 2 main elements of journalism. In their book, Bill Kovac and Tom Rosenstyle have listed out 10 elements of journalism. And what we need, and the strap for the book, if you read, is what news people should know and the public should expect. What is it that the public should expect from journalism? And that is what we call media literacy in some ways. So journalism's first obligation is to the truth. These are the 2 elements, the first 2 elements. So never mind what you are talking about, never mind what the story is, it first needs to be true, right? And then how will you ensure that it's true? The journalism's essence really is a discipline of verification. Unless the story is verified, it's not really journalism. And these are 2 things that actually differentiate journalism from anything else, right? And this is what differentiates journalism from gossip and dinner time conversation, right? Stony Brook University took this further and said there are 3 traits that define journalism as a source of reliable information, right? These are verification. First, they're verification, independence, and accountability. So information from most journalistic sources, or actually from all journalistic sources, most newspapers, credible TV channels, is verified. right? It has been cross-checked and only then put out. The sources, so any information that comes, and I'll talk more about it when I talk about gatekeeping, but any information that has been put out by a journalist is verified. And this is one trait of journalism. The second trait of journalism is independence, right? So most of the sources quoted by these media houses are independent. They are not somebody who have a finger in somebody's pie. So for instance, when this COVID-19 situation is going on, most journalists will quote the World Health Organization or the Center for Disease Control and so on and so forth, because these organizations are independent. They are not obliged to anybody. They do not serve any vested interests, very clearly. So credible media houses will quote the WHO in the current situation, right? And media houses are accountable. They are accountable in the sense that they're putting their names to it. They are accountable in the bylines and corrections that media houses put out show accountability. So if a media house, for instance, is putting a story out with the reporter's name on it, you can be sure that the reporter is saying, or the media house saying, that we are very sure that this story is verified and this story is accurate. Right? And part of this accountability is when the media house has made a mistake, where they turn around and say, we're sorry, but this is a mistake we have made. Now, there are times when a lot of credible media houses make mistakes. And after all, we're all human. Their media houses are basically filled with humans and people. Okay, there are a lot of bots writing a lot of journalism stories these days, but largely they are human. And when media houses make a mistake, they have to turn around and say, look, this is a mistake we made. And the other thing is that they have to name their sources, right? Put their name to it and name their sources. Anything that comes with anonymous sources is usually not credible. It's usually not called credible. So let's get back to the information revolution for a moment, right? And the flood of information that's coming our way through the not so traditional methods like forwards, right? And so I was talking about verification. So the difference between these forwards and gossip is basically journalism is no gatekeeping in these forwards and all the gossip that happens. There's absolutely no checks. Give me a moment while I explain how gatekeeping works in journalism. So when a reporter writes a story, she cross-checks everything that has been told to him, right? If the health secretary says that the number of cases as of today in India is a certain number, 85,000 or 86,000, the thing for a journalist to do at that moment is to check the numbers put out by every state and add them up and see if they amount to the same, right? This is a very, very basic, minor verification that I'm giving you just for you to get how gatekeeping works in journalism, right? So reporters will verify everything that they are told, everything that they hear, and everything that they see too. Because it's quite possible that when you look at something, it looks very obviously one thing, but when you actually delve into it a little more, you'll realize that it's completely different, right? So how do they do this? How do they do the verification? They do this by talking to people in the know, by acquiring documents, right? By looking up data, right? Only then they look at all of this, and only then do they actually send their story to the desk. Once the story reaches the desk, it in turn verifies everything that the reporter has written, right? So you might think that this is just such a waste of time, but it's really, really important. So the person at the desk, it's usually a copywriter or a sub-editor, checks all facts, checks if the language is correct, the grammar is right. Sometimes language and grammar mistakes can lead the sentence to mean something completely different than what the reporter actually meant. So the desk verifies the language, they clean up copy, and then they also check statements made by the reporter, right? They check data, they also get access to data, they look at what's been said in the past, they look at archives, and also they talk to the reporter and find out, did he actually say this or did he mean something else? So that's the other thing that that's the thing that the desk does. So it's constantly checking what the reporter does. So there's already 2 steps of gatekeeping. And some media houses, and this is becoming more popular today than it was in our days, have a fact check. If they think a story is suspect, they send it to the fact checker, and the fact checker will go through every story and ensure that what is being put out on the TV channel or the newspaper or the website is absolutely correct, right? So therefore, if you see information that we've received from a credible media house has gone through at least 2, if not 3 levels of gatekeeping, right? So what happens when you come across non-traditional media, for instance, right? So I receive a forward on WhatsApp, Facebook, Twitter, whatever. I look at it, I think, oh, this is going to interest you, right? Or somebody else. And without stopping to think whether this makes sense, whether this is really true or it's not, I swipe and you've got it, right? Absolutely no gatekeeping. And that is where the trouble is. And people have lost lives. So in Iran, for instance, Iran was one of the countries that was worst affected by the COVID-19 situation, right? And one of the WhatsApp forwards that went around was saying that if you drink methanol, you will not get COVID-19 or you will be cured of it. And you had, I think, at least 30, 40 people who died because they drank methanol. And methanol is dangerous to drink, right? It's also, you had Donald Trump a few weeks ago who had actually said, if you inject yourself with disinfectant, chances are that you will kill COVID-19, right? We didn't really know whether it was a joke or not, right? But information that goes out on forwards like this, then of course in 2018, we had the horrendous situation where at least 30 people were lynched in the country because WhatsApp forwards went about saying that there are strangers in your town, village, city, and they've come to kidnap children. And random strangers who'd come for work, who'd come as tourists, who were probably just going through the place, were caught, were lynched, were killed, right? And there were more than 30 deaths in the country that year, simply because of forwards coming. Now, this might sound like I'm completely anti-technology. I'm not. I love technology. I love the things it can do, right? But it's how you use it. It's like a knife in a surgeon's hand or in the hand of a serial killer, right? So how do we solve this problem? How do we solve this problem of non-traditional media having no gatekeeping at all? So the thing is, all of us have become prosumers. We produce and we consume. So when we get something and we shoot raw footage, so we're producing something and then we send this across, right? So we're actually producing and we're publishing it. So when we've started publishing something and when we've started producing something, we also need to become gatekeepers, right? And for us to become gatekeepers, we need to do some critical thinking. And we need to ask questions and we need to have a lot more news literacy. So what is news literacy? Basically, news literacy's main aim is to inform the public what your news should be like. Apart from a headline, a byline, a photo, and maybe a photo caption, what are the attributes of a good news story, right? A lot of us are not really aware of what a good news story should contain. So we're going to quickly go through about a few points on what a good news story should be like, right? First of all, a good news story must be true and it must be verified, right? That's why a lot of journalists have a problem with the term fake news. Fake news is not news, right? If it is news, it is true and it's verified, right? Fake news, as you call it, is just misinformation. It's not news, right? We have to get that nomenclature right? So a good news story, I'm going to say this again and again, it should be true and it should be verified. Second, it must tell all sides of the issue. It just can't tell you one side of the issue. It has to be fair, it should be fair to everybody concerned. It could be fair. It has to be, if the story is going about that this doctor charged me so much for actually treating me for taking a test for COVID-19, right? And when the government has said that you can't charge more than 4,500 rupees, you need to not only get the point of the person who's been charged 4,500 rupees or 5,000 or 10,000 rupees, but you also need to talk to the doctor and find out what happened. What happened for you to charge 4,500 rupees? You also need to talk to the government and say, okay, if these guys are charging more than 4,500 rupees, what are you going to do about it? You need to talk to an expert who will probably tell you, so this guy has a problem. He's right when he says you can't charge me 10,000 rupees, but the doctor also has this issue. And so the government probably needs to do this. So your story must be fair and it must be balanced, right? Third, the story must have multiple and named sources. Okay, so it's not enough that if you get information from one source. So there's one guy saying, this hospital charged me 10,000 rupees for a test that should cost me 4,500 rupees is not enough. Find out if there are 3 other people who've been charged the same 10,000 rupees. Find out if there are 10 other people. Find out if there are 5 other doctors who are charging 10,000 rupees and not just, you know, one of these chaps who's charging 10,000 rupees. Right? So then what happens? Your story completely changes. It's not just against this one doctor or this one person. It's not one-on-one. You suddenly realize that this is a trend. You realize that this is a bigger issue. So your sources have to be multiple. And 2, those sources have to be named. They have to be ready to put their names to it. If somebody says anonymous sources, then I would be very skeptical about it, right? I'd like to, okay, I understand in some cases when a certain source who has, has access to information that he ought not to have and is putting his or her life at risk by giving you that information. So there is a chance that you will not name that source, right? Of course, in journalism, and again, people find it very difficult to believe, but it's true that when you do not name the sources, your editor, the owner of your media channel, your immediate boss, all of them know who that source is, right? It might, the anonymity is only for the public, right? Because your editor needs to know if this source is really true, and there are chances, and we do this all the time, is that your editor will call up that source and talk to him or her and find out whether you've actually got the source correct, whether you've quoted the source correctly, and so on and so forth. So sources have to be multiple. Multiple people have to corroborate your story, and they have to be named as much as possible. And the fourth one, and this is not the complete picture, I'm just giving you a small peek into what good journalism and what a good news story should be like. The reporter has to be transparent about how the reporter got the information and whether they believe that this information is correct, and also about how they have verified it, right? So they need to tell you how they got the information. So if the reporter pretended to be, and this a lot of media houses seem to be doing this at some point of time or the other, pretended to be a patient and went into this hospital that charges 10,000 rupees for a test, then the reporter needs to say that to the public. The reporter needs to say that in his or her report that I pretended to be this, right? The reporter needs to be completely transparent with his or her audience and say that this is how I got the information. And I believe this information is correct because I have verified this information with A, B, C, D, document X, Y, Z, and so on and so forth, right? So they need to be completely transparent about this. The reporter also needs to be transparent about information that they did not get but ought to have got. The reporter needs to tell the public, look, I also ought to have got the owner of this hospital. I've only got the public relations guy, but I haven't got the owner of the hospital. The reporter needs to tell the reader or the audience that needs to be transparent about the fact that they ought to have got this information, but they haven't got it. And they ought to tell you why you didn't get it, right? So this is basically the attributes of a good news story. So the next time you look at a news story, stop and think, right? When you read or when you watch it, or you come across a news story on a website, stop and think. Ask these questions, right? Is the story being verified? Does it have all sides of it? Are the sources really named? And are these sources really authentic sources? Are they, sometimes people tend to quote opinion as information. No, there's a difference between news and opinion. News is a fact. Opinion is what somebody thinks about that fact, right? An analysis is what somebody thinks about that fact, or somebody's telling you, this is what happens if this fact occurs, right? So stop, ask these questions, always and always, always ask questions. The thing with critical thinking is there are no stupid questions, right? So always ask questions and do some fact checking, right? Now for the fact checking thing, for the fact checking bit and all of that, you need to listen to the next speaker. Thank you, Sophie.
All right. Thank you so much, Kanchan. I think you raised some very good points. I think all of us, our participants, all of the audiences need to really understand that you mentioned a good point about being prosumers. So we are not just consumers of information, but we are also producing information and disseminating it to, circles. It could be peer groups, it could be family circles. So I think this realization that not everything that we come across is a news, and what are the attributes that help you understand what really news is important. So you can really take a step back and think for a moment before sharing it with your family and friends, wherein your intention to really help can sometimes backfire, like what happened in Iran and other cases we've seen in our country as well. Specifically at the time of COVID, information can really save lives, but we need to be sure about the information that we are sharing and keep check on the information that we are passing on. Remember, everybody these days has a printing press in their hands, and not just a printing press, they can also disseminate information through various channels. Well, thank you, Kanchan. And from that, Pratik, why don't you now tell us, I know we've been getting a lot of questions about, what the trends broadly around COVID and misinformation are, and also what are some of the simple tips that people can really use to, verify. So first part, of course, that Kanchan covered is the realization that not everything is a news, and really to know what is a news. Now, how about getting a message and really confirming it, being the prosumers? Over to you, Pratik.
Thank you, Surbi, for that. And thank you, Ms. Kaur, for the wonderful presentation. So, the first thing that we need to ask ourselves, I'll share my screen. Yeah, so the first thing that we need to ask ourselves is, how is misinformation impacting us? We in the previous presentation, we saw what is news, what is not news, what is a good news story and things like that. But these days, as far as consumption of information is concerned, we consume information from so many sources, and very often these are not authentic sources, so especially, now that pretty much a large part of this planet is under lockdown, we are all on our phones, and consistently we are getting information, and we're consuming a lot of information these days. I know for a fact that I'm the editor of Alt News, and the Alt News consumption has gone up. So I'm glad that way that more people are reading fact checks, but it is not just that more people are reading fact checks, more people are consuming all sorts of information. So and what is the impact that it is having on us, on the society in general? So for example, this picture that you see on the screen, this is from Bandra in Mumbai, and a particular news channel had put out a video. The video itself was not misinformation; it was just not properly represented information, and it claimed that first of all, there were rumors that trains are going to start. This was right after the first lockdown in India. There was rumor that the trains are going to start, and then this channel put out information about that, about a government circular which spoke about something related, and it was massively viral in the migrant population in Mumbai. And a lot of people at the end of the first lockdown, they came to to the Bandra station, thinking that it's, they can go back home. And we are seeing the migrant crisis all over the country, with people desperately walking hundreds of kilometers to get back home. So there's this desperation in them, and on top of that, you add this misleading piece of news, and that is all that is required for people to act on it. And so many people turned out, they got lathi charged for no reason, for no fault of their own. The police had to resort um, to certain action, because there was just so many people. The situation had become uncontrollable, and then they had to go through lathi charge, and eventually this became the talking point of the day. But this is not the only thing that has happened in the past few days. There are so many things, so many events in the society that are dictated by misinformation. So many of you must have also seen this horrific video, or at least heard about this incident, where in a place called Palghar in Maharashtra, two sadhus were killed. And while the issue got politicized, because a lot of things in India gets politicized, nobody went to the crux of the issue. What was the crux of the issue? The crux of the issue was that there was a rumor in that area which claimed that there are these robbers who are out there, and this particular place where the sadhus killed, the sadhus were killed, there was a lookout party that was put out, and they were supposed to look out for these quote unquote robbers. And when they saw certain individuals who, in their mind, and here we are talking about a mind which is affected, which is going through a certain emotion. When you're a lookout party, you are usually thinking of some robber with maybe uh, a weapon or something like that, and you're careful. And when you see somebody who may look like a robber, you act on it. And here in this case, two sadhus were killed. So there are a lot of things around us that are controlled by misinformation that circulates on social media, and very often by mainstream media as well. I saw there are a lot of questions about the credibility of mainstream media, and it is true that even mainstream media in India is hugely responsible for propaganda and misinformation that goes around. Uh, now, so so let's come to what has happened. As many panelists have pointed out, WHO itself has called this an infodemic, and we actually like to call it a misinfodemic. It's not an infodemic; it is a misinfodemic. And uh, and what have been the trends? Number one thing that has to be pointed out is that yes, WHO is talking about it now, but this is not something that has come out of the blue. Like everything that we are seeing around the world, we have not been adequately prepared for this. Whether it is health services, whether it is anything, food, etc. And in even the case of information or information literacy, or genuine, how should people check for genuinity of information, we have not prepared the world at large for such a pandemic or a misinfodemic. So that is why we are here. But uh, let's look at what has happened during this period as far as misinformation is concerned. Yes, misinformation has been there now for a lot of misinformation for last 3-4 years, but now there has been sort of a huge peak. So uh, when uh, when the um, pandemic was largely limited to China, there was the first strain of misinformation that we saw was that there was a lot of misinformation that was targeting China as a state. For example, this tweet that you see on the screen, you can see three policemen, and they're standing next to a police van in their PPE kits, and in the next scene what you see is that they load their rifles, and then you see them walking into an apartment complex. The scene after that is uh, a woman sitting on a ground and crying, and the scene after that is two people dead on a sidewalk. And the claim is that 25,000 people have been killed just by police shooting them, because in China, police is suspecting all the suspected coronavirus patients, China is shooting them. And that is the claim. And this was massively viral, and not just in India. This was viral all over the world. Now, what this actually was there were four unrelated clips that were put together. And this is, this happens a lot, that people morph, people take information from different things and juxtapose it to make it seem like this all belongs to the same event. So in this particular case, there were these police officers who were out to do some, whatever police work, and you could see them loading their rifles. But the next scene where you can see a woman crying, that was at least 2 years old, much before the COVID-19 thing started. So it had got nothing to do with the police itself. But because these two clips were juxtaposed and no context was given, it would seem like the police is killing people. And this is the next scene where you can see the victims crying, and it was not that. So this was the first trend of misinformation that we could see as to things that are happening inside China. Now, one thing must be stated here is that probably the Chinese state itself is partly responsible for this, because of the information blackout that we saw as far as China is concerned, and where there was this huge lack of transparency from their part, and of course this, I'm sure this is something that will be debated for many, many months about, how they reported the pandemic, did they report it on time, and things like that, and what happened. We have heard stories about, we have read news reports about how people who originally tried to report the pandemic were stopped from doing that, and other social related stories. So the other aspect of, we spoke about transparency earlier. Transparency has to be limited not just to journalism but also to governance, and the information sort of war that we saw towards China. The issue was also that the Chinese government wasn't transparent. So it was very difficult to make out what is true and what is not. So this is what was happening at the start of the pandemic, when the pandemic was largely limited to China. As it spread to more parts of the world, we started seeing a range of medical and health misinformation. And as it reached India, we saw huge amount of health misinformation. For example, this is a tweet by a journalist where he's putting out that government of Telangana has said that if you take this drug called arsenic album 30, then it's a prophylactic medicine. What that means is that it is going to help you not get the infection. It is going to prevent the infection. And unfortunately, it was not government of Telangana who had started this, but it was a union ministry called Ayush Ministry, which stands for Ayurveda, Yoga, Unani, Siddha, and Homeopathy. That had put out this claim that if you take this homeopathic drug called arsenicum album 30, it is going to prevent you from getting coronavirus. And it was complete misinformation. At this point in time, there is no cure for COVID-19, no proven. There are a lot of tests going on, a lot of research going on, but there's no proven cure for COVID-19. There's no vaccine. So anytime you see one such information, you always have to be wary. You always have to check your sources. Because there are also a lot of people out there to profit from this, right? So somebody might say that, look, this is a cure for COVID-19. I have this drug. And people, because you are in a state of fear, misinformation works the best when you have a certain, when society at large is going through a certain emotion, whether it is, and usually these are extreme emotions, whether this is fear, whether this is hatred, whether this is anger. And in case of this pandemic, fear has been the predominant emotion in people at large, that there's no end, there's no light at the end of the tunnel. We don't know when this is going to end. In India, we don't know whether there's going to be lockdown 5.0, whether there's going to be lockdown 6.0. At this point of time, we have no clue. So obviously people are worried. People are worried for their businesses, people are worried for their families, plus this information chaos. So people are generally worried. And when in such cases, when you put out information, people are more likely to consume misinformation and believe it, especially if it adheres to certain biases that they may have. So, for example, if you get something like this on your WhatsApp, what does it say? That a vaccine is already available. That is the claim. And because all of us are looking out for this ray of light that, okay, now possibly this is the time, and all the news reports are saying that, you need a vaccine for this issue to really come, for this issue to be really controlled. And then on WhatsApp, you get this image saying that, US has found a vaccine, and this company called Roche has said that they are going to ship out millions of doses. But is it true? I mean, and that is where you have to check your sources. Number one, vaccinations take months and months to develop, sometimes up to 2 years. And secondly, once a vaccine is developed, imagine the task of creating vaccines for the entire population, for the entire globe. That is going to take many more months. So anything which says that this is already there, this is a quick fire solution, you need to check your sources. And what this image was, and there's a thing called Google reverse image search, and there's something called Yandex reverse image search. Reverse image search, what it does is that you go to images.google.com, and you'll see a small camera button. And you click on that camera button, you upload the image. And when you upload the image, it will show you matching images from different authentic sources, authentic or inauthentic sources. And when you do this, in this case, what you will see is that this is actually a test kit, using which you can, and this company announced a fast test kit, something which will give results very soon. We know that, so many people are getting tested all over. And there are times when we get the test results, the COVID test results, only after 3 days or so. And this was a huge leap, where this company claimed that it can give you test results within an hour or something like that. And this image was propagated claiming that this is a vaccine. So always be careful about anybody making extraordinary claims. That is lesson number one. Now, in India, as I said, fear was a predominant issue, but in India, we had a double whammy of sorts. As we got into the first lockdown around the end of March, an issue broke out, and this was around this religious congregation in a place called Nizamuddin in Delhi. And there's this place called Bangle Wali Masjid in Nizam, and it is also called the Nizamuddin Markaz, where a particular sect of Muslims called Tablighi Jamaat, they had congregated, okay? And the congregation happened in the second week of March, not at the end of March. And and what happened was that in this particular congregation, people from all over the world had come to attend this congregation. And by mid-March, we already know that the pandemic had spread pretty much to all around the globe. So the people who came to this, some of them were carriers of this virus. And because this is a highly infectious disease, and these people were these people were together in this small enclosed place, many people got the infection. And then from this markaz, from this congregation, people went to all over India, multiple states, taking the infection along with them. So they became a vector for the disease. And that is always very dangerous in a pandemic. Of course, we can also I'm not going to go into what should have been done, what could have been done. There have been multiple discussions around this issue. But what followed was not just a 24/7 coverage of just this particular vector, where all the news channels could talk about was Tablighi Jamaat and more of Tablighi Jamaat. And this took a political color. And what was that political color? The political color was that now not only people were talking about Tablighi Jamaat, but Muslim community in general in India were being targeted, claiming that they are knowingly and willingly spreading the virus. So, for example, this is one of the videos that became extremely viral. And it was claimed that Indian Muslims are spreading the virus by licking plates and spoons. And it showed a group of young men sort of licking plates and spoons. And it was a lot of people I know received this video. But the fact was that this video is at least 2 years old. This is an extreme custom of Bohri Muslims. Bohri Muslims is a sect. A lot of them are there in Gujarat and Maharashtra, especially Mumbai. And they have a belief that no food should be wasted. So this apparently was after an event where the organizers or the elders of the event asked all the plates and spoons to be cleaned up based, according to the custom. And there were these young Muslim men, boys, they were licking the plates and spoons, and it was claimed that this is an attempt to spread coronavirus. And you must have seen tons of these videos, so and again, as we say, as I pointed out, or at the start of this presentation, that all of this has real life impact. So for example, we have had Muslim vendors being attacked, Muslim fruit vendors, vegetable vendors being attacked, because there are these videos claiming that they are willingly spreading the infection. This is another example. This video went viral, and it was claimed that this man in the white T-shirt sitting in a police van spat at the police, and he was a Nizamuddin Markaz attendee. Again, Nizamuddin is in Delhi, and it was claimed that this man spat at the police, and again, it was an attempt to spread the virus. The video actually was from Bombay, had got nothing to do with this Nizamuddin Markaz, and it was an under trial person who was being taken to the court, and he spat at the police, and the Mumbai police themselves spoke about this, that he complained about lack of, him not getting home food, and that is why he spat at the police. And it had got nothing to do with Nizamuddin Markaz, nothing to do with Delhi. The video was from Bombay. So anytime you get a video, image, or message which which sort of affects you emotionally, it triggers your emotion, it causes any kind of extreme emotion to be evoked inside you, whether it is anger, hate, fear, etc. There's a need to step back. We need to be very, very conscious about what is happening around us, and there is a need to step back and then see this again, try to verify it. Yes, it is difficult to verify, and I don't think different organizations, the big organizations, whether it is Facebook, Twitter, Google, I don't think they have done enough to tackle this issue. But still, as individuals, it is our responsibility, knowing that what a viral forward can do. It can kill a person. There have been 40 child kidnapping related deaths in India in the past 3-4 years. And what a viral forward can do is that it can kill a person. So it is also our individual responsibilities to step back and look at information and try and verify it, and see what fact-checking websites are saying about it, what news organizations saying about it, figure out what your authentic sources are. How much time do I have? Right. So these are the things that you need to look at when you're looking at misinformation. Is the source credible or authentic? So, for example, in that first tweet where we saw that it is being claimed that Chinese police are killing people, in the bracket, this person said that received from a credible source. Now, what is a credible source? That is the question that you need to ask. Just because a person on Twitter, on Facebook, or WhatsApp says that it is received from a credible source, doesn't mean that it is a credible source. First, what you need to do is that look at whether this has been published anywhere. Whether sometimes it takes a simple Google search. China, police in China killing people. That's all. You see a video, you describe the video. Marcus attendee spitting at cop. So when you, the first thing to do is describe these things in Google. That is the first step to fact checking. You see a video and you figure out what you see in the video and you describe it. And sometimes, fact checking websites like Alt News or Boom Live, there are many fact checking websites in India now. It takes time to fact check. It is not that some video comes and we're going to push out a story in half an hour. It doesn't happen. Sometimes it takes us even 5 days to push out a story. So, but more often than not, we will push out a story within 24 to 48 hours. So wait for that time. Do your Google searches, figure out what information is coming, and then based on what you see, what you understand, feel free to share information. But take this step back and wait for more credible information to come out about that issue. So that is one thing. Um, uh, the other thing is peer pressure. You know, uh, many forwards tell you that mainstream media is not going to talk about this. Only WhatsApp is going to give you this information, and you must forward it for the sake of one specific religion or for the sake of some, something. And again, all of this is emotional manipulation. You have to make sure that the, the entire purpose of misinformation is to emotionally manipulate you, and you have to make sure that this emotional manipulation is not happening. So those are the few things that you can generally see. Rest, I suggest, those who are on this call, you can go to a website called Poynter, Poyntr. Google this, poyntr.com, and look for a short misinformation course, Poynter misinformation course. Go through that misinformation course. It is a short course. It won't take you very long. And when you go through it, then you will already be in a position to fact check few of the things. As far as COVID misinformation is concerned, please be sure that you're looking at authentic sources like WHO. You can also look at Ministry of Health. You may not look at Ayush Ministry. It is not the most credible source. But do look at the Health Ministry website, WHO, and things like that. So let's say when it is being claimed that that coronavirus will not be spread in hot and humid areas, and this includes the Chief Minister of my state, Gujarat, who stated this on the floor of the assembly, that Gujarat is not going to be affected because it is hot. And we know now Gujarat is number 2 in India in terms of the number of cases. Do not believe this. Do not even believe it if the head of a state says this. Do not believe it if Trump says that having, taking bleach is going to help you. No, it is not going to help you. So always, irrespective of what source it comes from, no source becomes automatically credible. Use your rationality and figure out, don't go to an orthopedic doctor to ask for a heart disease. Don't go to a cardiologist to ask for, a solution to your bone injury. So know who your sources are, and so let's say if there's information is about medical misinformation, go to WHO, go to Health Ministry, right? So when you get things like this, whether, it can't happen in hot and humid, go to WHO website. When it claims that consuming alcohol can provide protection, and this example came before, and I think the death toll was actually much higher. I think it was close to 200 people who died in Iran. And again, coming back to the impact of misinformation, it kills people. You may not, it may not impact you directly, but it may impact someone who does not have that rationality. And mind you, we live in a country where there's a huge range of education. There are people who probably, there is a section of population in our country who probably hasn't heard the word Photoshop. If you, they don't know that there's a software which exists, which is Photoshop. They don't know there are these variety of softwares using which you can create misinformation. So they won't be able to decipher what is authentic, what is not authentic. So it also becomes especially the responsibility of people who have some amount of digital literacy, some amount of education, that they do not spread misinformation, because it might end up in the WhatsApp inbox of somebody who has no idea how to authentic information. So that is why doubly it is our responsibility. And so, if it says that consuming garlic can prevent coronavirus, no, it cannot. So these are things, use your rationality, make sure that you're not getting emotionally manipulated. And those are the first steps of preventing yourself from falling for misinformation. I think that's all I have for now. Thanks.
All right, thank you so much, Pratik, for running us through this presentation, talking about some of the trends that we've seen. I know you've been looking at trends. Even, I mean, you sort of you and other fact checkers saw this infodemic coming, and it's just that the pandemic really brought it to the fore, and a lot of people are taking note. But you've been working on this, for a long time. I think some good takeaways, from Pratik's talk, which I would like all of you to sort of come back to, which is the need to step back, really see whether your intent to help can harm, because wrong information can take lives, while good information can save lives at this time of COVID crisis. But also false information that you probably were hoping to share with someone with an intention to help can actually backfire. And also some simple tips that Pratik shared. Sometimes all you need is a simple search. Yes, there are a few cases which are complicated, like Pratik mentioned, and while there are experts doing their work, but sometimes a lot of them have covered it already. So all you need to do is describe the basic, of whatever you're seeing in a message that you've got or a post that you're reading, and see, are there news organizations which have fact checked this? Are there fact checkers which have fact checked it? And sometimes in just about a matter of a few seconds, you will see, some result coming up. Also you mentioned about reverse image search. A lot of you had asked, about what are the simple tools. Hence, reverse image search is again something which helps you know what is the origin of a picture that you're looking at. Of course, Pratik mentioned another pointer course. I would also like to mention we at FactShala will be in touch with you with a lot more programs through this year. We will be holding a lot of workshops, training sessions. We've done in the past, along with Internews, along with DataLeads, a lot of sessions for journalists and newsrooms who are doing some fantastic work. But we also hope to connect with you, on the ground now to really help you know. I know this is just about, all we had was one. Wherein we hope to really ignite that need to learn how to differentiate between news and non-news. They really need to know why. You should understand for yourself whether a piece of information that you're seeing is true or not. Well, I know we have a lot of questions. If I may quickly go to some, and if our speakers can start taking, we'll try. I know we are over our time limit, but I would stay on this, with question answers, because we really want to take a lot of questions that you guys have sent, and share that with our speakers. So if all of you, some of you can stay with us, while we discuss this, please, you're most welcome to. If there are others who are pressed for time and need to sort of hang up now, you will find this video on our social channels, and you can get back to it later. So if I may first come to Kanchan, of all the questions we've been getting while we were asking people to sign up for this, a lot of us, a lot of participants wanted to know. There was a question where someone mentioned that a lot of middle-aged people are falling prey to fake facts, and that is found in videos made that are circulating on various platforms. So how can they ensure that family members understand this thing without feeling really offended, so they don't go on the defensive while they battle misinformation within their smaller groups? Do you have any share from your personal experience?
Yeah, I think basically you need to take them into confidence and tell them, look, ask them the questions. And I think always a good idea is to ask questions. And the one thing that we completely ignore all the time is common sense. When you look at something, usually something will tell you this is not all that is there. And so it might be a good idea to take the family member into confidence, ask the family member questions. Do you think this is really true? Do you think this is possible? And then work with a family member and with technology and say, obviously the family member is looking at a phone, a smartphone, and seeing, this is how it's, they got a WhatsApp forward. Teach them how to do search, do a reverse image search, and it's really easy on a smartphone. And to find out what could be there. Also ask them to say, okay, let's do a Google search for this and see what comes up, and work with them, basically. Take them into confidence. I think that's important.
Yeah, so essentially, if you've learned something from this session, pass on that information literacy to friends around, because essentially you consume a lot of information, and that information decides the actions that you take. So help friends and family around really understand the importance of consuming good information and identifying really the good information. Talking about mobile from there, we also have a couple questions, Pratik, on really tips that people can use, tools that people can use on mobile phone to fact check an information. Would you want to take that very quickly?
So if you're fact checking on a mobile phone is difficult typically. Um, Typically you want to be on a desktop to fact check, because most of the tools that you use for fact checking are built more for the desktop as opposed to the mobile phone. But few things that you can do is, I think WHO, are you going, Survi, are you guys going to have a resource list at the end of this? So IFCN now has a WhatsApp bot.
We can share it with our participants.
Yeah, please do share the resource list. So IFCN, for example, International Fact Checking Network, now has a WhatsApp bot with a phone number. You can send a message to them asking them whether something is true or false. WHO themselves have a WhatsApp bot now. So you can send the information to them. There is a tool for reverse image searching on the phone, and if you go to your Play Store or your App Store, and if you write reverse image search, you can you can install one of those apps. Videos and audio, video clips and audio clips are more difficult to debunk on the phone. They are, because it needs a lot more work, and I would just suggest that go to Google and search, look for a few keywords, wait up for a bit. Some or the other fact checking website will fact check viral videos and tell you what the sources are. So yeah, that's pretty much on the mobile phone.
Yeah, and like you mentioned, sometimes all you need is like a quick Google search, and which you could do. Kanchan also mentioned about, I think, lateral, reading, that come out of that message that you've got wherever you're reading it. It could be on, your platforms, or various messages that you've got. Come out of it and see what is it that others are saying about it. Other credible sources, our media organizations are really reporting about it. So that's something you can do on the phone as well. All right, if I may, ask, there is, so our participant Sangeeta Chaudhary is wanting to know, if we come across fake news, how and where can we raise our concerns or complaint? Kanchan, would you want to take that?
I'm not sure you can raise your concerns. You can, of course, complain to the, the police or somebody like that. In some cities, the police actually take fake news complaints very seriously, and especially in the last few weeks, a lot of misinformation on COVID-19 is being taken very seriously. So that's where you can raise your concerns. But I think the best thing would be really to get the right information, do a search, get the right information, and send it right back to all those who are sending you all this false information. I think that's the way to possibly deal with it better.
Yeah. And also, like Kanchan said, just be a party to it. I know a lot of fact checkers, I'm sure, Pratik, you have one helpline, and other fact checkers and media organizations do have helplines. So if you have come across something, like a message, and you want to know the truth, if you aren't able to follow these simple steps and really find out for yourself, you can report it to these organizations, and they will do the fact check and probably, disseminate to a lot of others. So you, in sense, become a party to this process of, helping the right information reach the audience. Then another question from Eham Chandrasen, who asks, is there a database of fake news content that may be accessed for research? I'm sure, a lot of academicians joining us for this session. Pratik, would you have a sense on that? I know you guys have an app that collates your stories, and also probably IFCN has a database of COVID-related fact checks.
So we don't have a readily accessible database. Yes, we have an app. Oh, by the way, the question as to where you could ask if it's an image or video, you could download the Alt News app on your Android phone. The iOS version is not out yet, but if it's an image or video, you can send requests on this app. The WhatsApp Alt News also has a WhatsApp number 76000160. So that is also where we take requests. But as far as the database is concerned, we do have a database for our app. We are trying to figure out ways of exporting this for academics, and we want to make sure that academics get access to OneSys database, hopefully as soon as 6 months, where it can be used for more academic research. So we're still working on that.
All right, thanks, Pratik. Then we have another participant, Eham Chandrasen, who wants to ask that with all the AI and ML and algorithms available with big platforms, why is fake news not getting scrutinized, parsed, and trashed before causing damage? Kanchan, do you want to jump in here and explain to our readers why why is it not possible for platforms to really cut it at the source?
Right. So this is like the old story that says that a lie will go around the world twice before the truth even has time to wear its pants. So there is no way you can control the flow of fake news. It's just amazing, and how much of it comes through different channels, and there are only a few channels that are actually working towards controlling it. So there's Facebook and Google, etc., who are trying to put in AI, who are actually they have moderators who are actually looking at fake news all the time. But like Pratik said earlier, they are not doing enough, and they cannot do enough. I think there are no quick fix solutions. We are constantly looking for quick fix solutions. That's not going to happen. I think what we need is education, that actually encourages critical thinking, that encourages you to stop and think, encourages everybody to stop and think when you get something. How could this really be true? You know, it's just a question that actually comes to your mind, but because you have a certain bias towards or against something, you will stifle that voice. You will say, no, 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 this must be true. It's come from my favorite aunt. That doesn't work that way. So I think we have to look at long-term solutions. We can't look at, oh, why is Facebook not doing it, or why is Google not doing it, or why are you not doing it? It's basically, there's so much of it going. There are bots that are putting out fake news, you know, by the millions. And the only way you can stop it is a long-term solution, to stop and think, really. And we're supposed to be the only species that can stop and think. I don't know what we're doing with it.
All right, thanks, Kanchan. We also have another, participant, Arvind Kumar, who's a research scholar, and he would like to know how to tackle the fight against fake news in the rural areas, because here local journalists and people, really don't know about authentic information and how to use the tools. So what is it that, can be done with this segment? Pratik, do you want to jump in on that?
So a lot of fact checkers are starting to write in vernacular languages. So for example, Alt News is published in both English and Hindi. There are other fact checking websites. The first thing that you have to do is go to Google and say IFCN signatories, IFCN certified signatories, and look at the list of fact checkers who are from India. I think there are about 8 to 9 fact checkers at this point in time. And then go to their websites. So I know, for example, Fact Crescendo publishes in Marathi and some other languages. So there are multiple fact checkers who are publishing in various languages. And so go to what they have to say, and read the fact checks there. And the local journalists need to start looking, sort of bookmark all these websites which publish in their specific language, in the language that they speak, or in the language that the local population understands. And I think that is the first step. But also to create these groups of people, these sort of let's say, call them information doctors. You go to a doctor when you have a disease. Let's create these people and again, this probably needs more organization. Maybe even FactShala or the organizations behind it can take this up. But create these network of quote unquote information doctors in different areas, where who can who have some amount of literacy, digital literacy, and they help in fact checking information by looking at different websites. By, let's say, there's a fact checking story only in English, but they can translate it, translate the operative part of it in the local language and push it out on WhatsApp. So yeah, a much bigger effort needs to be done. And as Kanchan stated, only fact checking is not going to solve. Many people, even when we first started Alt News, we were naive to think that we're going to write an article and it is going to stop misinformation. And no, it didn't happen. The solution has to be in education. The solution has to be people thinking for themselves, people employing critical thought, and acting accordingly. You give a farmer knows how to when to irrigate, when to when to cut his crop and things like that. That is because the farmer knows everything about his farm. But you give the same person a mobile phone and ask them to figure out where this video is from, they won't be able to, because they have education for a specific thing. And till the time they don't have the digital literacy, they will not be able to. So at the end of the day, the solution is in education.
All right, thanks, Pratik. We also have another, participant who's Sanjay Tambat, who says, in COVID environment, even the credibility of sources like WHO has sometimes been questioned. Whom to believe in such circumstances? Kanchan, do you want to dwell into, sometimes when there have been information updates from WHO and how that is conceived as info being wrong, and why is it happening in this time of an infodemic?
Yeah, sure. So everything, it's how you look at things. You could look at things, you could look at the WHO and say it's a credible source. You could be Trump and say WHO is being influenced by China, right? But having said that, when you get information, whether it's from the WHO, whether it's from anyone else, I keep saying this again and again, open up other sources. You have the World Wide Web. You have really the World Wide Web. You just open it up, you search for it, and you will find information. You will find research papers. You will find all kinds of stuff that you can access and think for yourself. But the other thing that happens is a lot of times an update or a correction, right, is often mistaken for misinformation, which is not true. Like I said earlier, people are just human. There must be something that has actually happened. Then the WHO has put up an update and said, no, this is not how, this is initially how we thought it was. No, it's not so. But that doesn't mean that the WHO is not being credible. In fact, to my mind, it's being a lot more credible when it's saying, this is a mistake we made, and here's the mistake we made, and here's how we are correcting it. Right? It's really how you look at things. And like I said, where do you go when you have, people always say mainstream media is not credible. A lot of mainstream media may not be credible. I mean, you might think they're not credible. But if you don't believe them, why don't you just do a Google search and look at what everybody else has to say? Look at 10 other sources and see, and think for yourself. Use your thinking capacity and see for yourself what the answer, where the answer lies. You'll know. In a while, you'll realize how credible or not WHO is.
And also, I think we all need to factor in with COVID-19, the situation has been so fast evolving and fluid.
Yeah.
That's something that probably WHO said bases their assessment, at the starting phase,
Yeah.
of COVID-19 probably doesn't hold true now. I mean, the situation is just so novel that, I think experts are trying their best to give out, an assessment of their, study and research at that moment, but that might change, some days later. And I know of, organizations who are also dating their sort of advisory that they are giving. I mean, one thing that you can keep in mind while you are looking at advisories from various sources in this instances, whether it is WHO, it is the ministry, is look at what date, specifically to do with, restrictions in your area. I think one source that you would look at is your local administration. You must certainly keep in mind what date was that advisory, released, because advisories are changing fast, like in a matter of, less than a week, an advisory might change drastically.
Yeah.
So that's something you all need to keep in mind.
In fact, they're changing in hours. Something in the morning has changed in the evening. And also, this is a new virus. Nobody knows what it really is about. So that's a problem.
Yeah. So a quick example would be WHO initially said that not everybody needs to wear masks.
Yes.
Then new research came out which said that which said that the infection can be spread by droplets, and that is when WHO changed the advisory and said that everybody needs to wear masks or should wear masks. So information is constantly evolving. There's new research being done as we speak. Thousands of researchers around the world, and depending on what the research finds, and once it gets peer reviewed, the advisories will change.
Yeah, and I think we need to keep in mind that this is sort of an unprecedented time, and none of us were really, prepared. And the sheer scale makes it sometimes really difficult. So, for instance, like this, maybe sometimes you won't want to say that WHO put out a wrong information, but that was probably their best assessment at that, time. All right, we have another question, wherein one of our participants wants to know whether people are also getting panicked by seeing COVID-19 positive cases in the radius on the app, that is, the Arogya Setu app. How much reliable is the information that's available on the app? Would you want to jump in on that, Pratik?
So, see, I'll jump in from the point of view of having worked on wireless for 15 years. What does Arogya Setu tell you, app? That this is the proximity of a person. Now, so I myself, I have worked on an application where using Bluetooth signal, we try to figure out where a person is inside a supermarket. And this is a project that I myself have worked on. And the way it works is by looking at signal strength. That is, all of this is a wireless signal. And by figuring out what is the signal strength, you figure out how far a person is. But it is a very, very inaccurate technology, to be fair. And the government pushing this down everybody's throat without enough testing, they're doing an unfair thing. It is not the most accurate technology where you'll be able to figure out the proximity of yourself with another person and use it for contact tracing. But the best thing is, but it is necessary to know, whether you have the Arogya Setu app or not, that the pandemic is truly here. And because I know that there was a case in a apartment across my house, so there will be people around you. But what is important to do is continue practicing social distancing, irrespective of who's around. Practice the same rules, that is, wear your mask, make sure that you wash your hands. If you get new things, if they are not perishables, try and use it after a few days. Sort of stock at least 2-3 days in advance, so that you don't have to use those things right away. There's a WHO advisory on how long certain viruses can live on certain surfaces. So these are things that you need to. It doesn't matter whether the person is in the next building or in 5 buildings away. What is important is to ensure that all the basic precautions are taken.
All right, thanks, Pratik. Kanchan, there's another question wherein, Raj Kumar, who's, one of our participants, wants to know, is there a mechanism to stop circulation of misinformation after a fact check has been done? And also probably a related question where someone asked, can Facebook censor content by themselves if no one reports it? Would that be a violation of privacy, censorship and freedom of expression and legislation and self-responsibility? How do we understand, what do we understand of this in respect to the infodemic?
So when something has been fact checked, it shows up. When you do a Google search or you do a Facebook search, it shows up on Google search and Facebook that it has been fact checked, and here is the correct information. Whether it's an invasion of privacy, this is all content that's out in the public sphere, and that is why it's gone viral, and that's why you can search for it. And if it is in the public sphere already, there is no question of privacy there. Anyway, privacy died with the internet in some ways. So I'm not sure. Yes, so content can be even after it's been fact checked, there is content that keeps coming up, and organizations do try to keep scoring it down through various ways, but there's no stopping it from coming up again. As Pratik will tell you, there will be videos that are 3 years old, 4 years old, that will again pop up and say, this is what happened yesterday. And it'll be an old video that has actually just come up. So there's no stopping it, yes.
All right. We also have Firoz Mohammed, who's asking, I see sometimes educated people creating and sharing misinformation. Do you think education will ever, really help this? Pratik, do you want to jump in and talk about, cases you've seen sometimes, from influencers, posting a lot of wrong information?
No, so education, so it depends on what sort of education, right? Yes, there are a lot of people who are educated, but do they have the relevant knowledge? That is the question, and which is why I gave the example of a orthopedic surgeon versus a cardiac surgeon. You don't go to an orthopedic surgeon if you want to have a heart surgery, and vice versa. So here, and of course, this is not as as much a specialty, but yes, people are educated, but they don't know how to deal with misinformation at this point of time. They don't know how to deal with the information chaos at this point in time. So this is a new subject. It is a new subject, and the world at large, and especially in India, I would say a large majority of population doesn't know how to deal with it. So yes, there are educated people, there are celebrities who are sharing misinformation, right from Amitabh Bachchan to Paresh Rawal to who all, but that is because they themselves do not have that capacity to handle this information chaos. They're putting out things that they're getting on WhatsApp onto their social media accounts and so on and so forth. So at this point of time, education is, just because you may have a master's degree or even a PhD does not mean that you know how to deal with the information chaos around us.
All right, and we have Sharmila Saha Roy asking us, so we, the media students and enthusiasts, will know all these, but how to educate people? I mean, I think what she means to ask is, if media students really get to know about these and they are enthusiastic about it, are there ways that they can contribute to tackle this problem? And on that note, I'll also share another participant has shared a comment with us in this context, where he says, I am the head of Department of Mass Communication at RTM Nagpur University. And since Jan 2020, we've launched a youth awareness campaign called Dekh Bhai Fake. So they've been, using this, promoting a question approach and involving their students to do this. Coming back to, I think, where we initially started, that once, if you were intending to forward a message to someone with the hope to help, and if you found out that that message is not true, maybe you should make the effort to really go out and, tell someone that this is something they shouldn't believe. Kanchan, do you have other cases of how maybe your college or other colleges are pitching in with this, entire cause?
Yeah, so we are, so one of the things that we do is we have a small fact-checking group that actually looks at stuff. We also, in our team, our editorial teams, that we work on students produce stuff, we have a fact checker in the team so that they ensure that whatever is coming out is true or not. And we go about telling people, we hold lectures, we talk to students, we talk not just to media students, but to all other students. And if you look at it, FactShala itself is a part of this whole effort to put the word out and say, not just to media students, but to everybody, that this is how you identify fake news and this is how you should not be spreading fake news. I think there's a lot of stuff going about. And also, if one person gets it and that one person actually sends out this information to 10 others and those 10 others send it out to 10 others, you'll soon have a geometric progression of spread of information on how to tackle fake news. I think each one of us need to make that effort.
Well, yeah. Also, there is another question on legal repercussions for spreading fake news. Syed, do you have a take on that?
Completely see a huge value with Pratik and Kanchan is actually emphasizing education. A lot of people are saying, hey, educated people spread most fake news. Key here is that what kind of education do they have, to be honest? A lot of people, even they are engineers and doctors, they don't know whatever comes on a WhatsApp or a Facebook is not information, is not truthful information. So I think we need a really new discourse. And I see a lot of schools, for that matter, from the second and third grade, they start now teaching media literacy. Like, look at Germany, for that matter, how they revolutionized the concept of education in the country. Why the Germans are so much interested in the history, so much interested in the research. So I think somewhere down the line, we need to go back to schools and colleges, actually, across, not really the journalism students, but across. It should be a compulsory subject that media literacy, consuming information, has to be a subject somewhere in the colleges. And I can see a lot of space. I'm so glad today that so many educators joined this webcast today. And I think it's so important that we have this network together as we move forward in the next 1 or 2 years, that we build a new understanding on the subject, and we create our own neighborhoods where we discuss these things publicly, like community radio station. I think there are a lot of people today also from the community radio stations across the country. They do these weekend broadcasts. They can have every Sunday, they can have a 20-minute, 30-minute about information, not really about fake, we call it fake news. I'm saying about information. What kind of information we consume, who owns this information, who produces this information, and what does this mean actually? So who are the owners of this information? So that really will empower us as a society.
All right. Thanks, Syed, for jumping in with this. And I know that our new program will also help, connect these people with this program, and they will be able to serve their communities better, by being part of this active movement that, we are sort of starting on ground, roping in a lot of, fact checkers, journalists, local media outlets, and also non-profit organizations who want to associate with us for this, learn about it, and go back to their, communities. I know we have exceeded the time, a lot. So I would want to give this a wrap, at this note. If I may just quickly take one last advice from each one of you, that, if it is one advice that you to give to all our participants as the wrapping note, what would that be? Pratik, why don't we begin with you?
The one thing that I constantly keep saying, that anytime you feel that a certain emotion within you is evoked, whether it's an extreme emotion, hate, anger, fear, when you read something on WhatsApp, Facebook, etc., it is time to stop, sort of step back, look at it again, sometimes take an information detox, just not look at certain things that trigger you, and only share things, especially these things that trigger you. It can trigger somebody else, and somebody, to the point that they may take action, and it can lead to loss of somebody's life. So anything that triggers you, always take a step back and verify. Don't share anything that triggers you.
All right, share only verified information. Kanchan, what would be the one big takeaway that you would want everyone to, take off from this session from your side?
It's something I keep saying again and again. Stop and think. Use your brains. Really, because you can see for yourself. You just have to ask a few questions, and you'll know for yourself whether this is really in the realm of truth or in the realm of lies or somewhere in between. And you have enough tools today to check it out. Just check and verify everything that you get.
All right, so think and stop, and stop and think and break the chain. That's coming from Kanchan. Sayed, do you have parting notes before we say bye to
Yeah,
our audience?
I think verify, verify and verify. Never forward, never share anything you're not sure of, because eventually this whatever you share, and if that is a misinformation, it will have a real world harm situation somewhere.
All right, so it's triple verify, verify and re-verify and be very sure of what you're forwarding. I think that's a great advice coming from, Syed. I would once again, sort of remind all our participants, if you think after hearing our experts, you've got something which helps you process the information that you're assessing better. And if you have sort of, fact checked something, do tag us on hashtag FactShala learning. I'll ask also my colleague Shivali to ping that hashtag, to you in the chat session so you all can see it. Hashtag FactShala learning, and send us your videos if you've processed any piece of information today. Hopefully when you look at all of the messages that you're getting, you will have a sort of a better sense on how you can analyze this. On that note, I would like to thank our speakers, Pratik, Kanchan, and also Syed for joining us, and all our participants who took our time on a Saturday morning to join us. I really hope we keep continue, being staying in touch and talk a lot more about this and see how we can help the community at large analyze online information better.